CSS is a language like HTML, but it has a different syntax, meaning it has different rules that govern how you communicate what you want to happen in your code. In HTML, you saw a lot of less than and greater than signs, and you won't really see them in CSS. You will see a lot of curly brackets, however. This is a classic programming scenario. You want to learn a new language? You've got to learn a new syntax that goes along with it. Let's look at CSS syntax to get started.
A typical line of CSS has the following syntax. You have a selector and an open set of curly braces, as well as a closed set of curly braces down below, and inside those curly braces, you will create a property value combination that is also known as a declaration. This property will be the CSS property you want to modify, and the value will be what you want to set that property to. These properties and values are applied to a selector, the selector being the HTML element with which you want to work. So this could be an H1, for example, or a P. But in either case, you apply whatever's inside the curly braces to that element. And to select an HTML element, you'll normally just write the name of the element, except for in the case of classes and IDs, which you will select with a period if you're talking about something with a class of warning. The period always represents selecting a class, or a pound sign if you're selecting an ID of something. Let's say you had an item on the page that had an ID of warning. You would select it in your CSS via the pound sign. No matter what, this part here, though, is called the selector, whether you're selecting an element name, a class, or an ID. To give some example of property value combinations that you might see commonly in CSS, you might see the font family property with a value of, let's say, Helvetica, which is a font. You could see the color property with a value of blue, or maybe a background color property with a value of yellow. And you'll notice that in all of these property value combinations, the name of the property ends with a colon and the name of the value ends with a semicolon. You need to pay attention to this punctuation because if you don't get it right, and let's say you put a semicolon here and here instead of a regular colon, your code will not work. It's always good CSS practice too to have each declaration on a separate line for the sake of readability. So in sum, your CSS statement might look like this, where we have an H1 heading, so a very big heading, font family Helvetica, meaning the heading will appear in the font Helvetica. Its text color will be blue and its background color will be yellow. You're not expected to memorize these properties or values just yet. We're only going over CSS syntax and using this as an example. All you really need to recall is that you have a property value combination that is then applied to a selected element in HTML.